is Rahul. How do I follow that? I mean, those slides were so cool. My slides are really lame, man. But yeah, it was a great talk. It was good listening to both Mona and Vikalp talking about the challenges of retention. A little bit about myself. I lead product at Zomato. Before that, I was at Snapdeal. I've seen the hyper-growth trajectory at Snapdeal and a little decline there. And before that, I spent 10 years in consumer internet in the Valley. I was at Twitter during pre-IPO and 2 years after IPO. And so I've seen their hyper-growth as well. And before that, I was a bunch of hyper-declining companies. So I've seen that as well. So if you have questions about how to deal with that, I can answer those as well. So we're going to talk about 4 things today. We're going to talk about general why retention is important and the challenges of retention, right? Everybody would want to retain more customers, but why is it hard? Then we'll talk about what is our philosophy of growth and retention at Zomato and my personal philosophy as well. And then we can talk about a couple of anecdotal examples on how we bring that all together in our product decisions, right? So, so retention is important primarily because it helps you build this loop. It helps you with acquisition, it helps you with virality, and it helps you with monetization. You may ask, like, how does it help with acquisition? I think it's obvious that the more users you retain, the larger your customer base will be. But it's not very obvious upfront that retention actually helps you acquire more customers. Think of a content platform, right? The more users they retain, the more people are contributing content, and that again leads to more traffic, and then again that leads to more users. So that's one obvious way in which it will help you in acquisition. The other more important, non-obvious way in which retention will help your acquisition is that the larger percentage of a cohort that you retain for a larger time frame, your LTV actually goes up. And with that higher LTV, you can now spend more on acquisition. And so there are always these challenges where you have to prioritize, like, where do I spend this money to get more users? You may have been priced out of certain channels because your competition is spending more, or your budgets don't allow it, and so on. But now, if you're retaining people well, you can actually use that as a defensive strategy as well. So you can go back to those channels and spend more. So that's one. And then obviously, the more people you retain, the more your people talk about your product, and the virality spreads like that. And monetization as well. I think the larger amount of cohort that stays with you, as I said, LTV will go out. So this all is like feeding into each other. And it's all driven by actual retention. So that's why it is important. But it's hard, right? And it's always getting harder. It's getting harder because, there's so much competition. There's not a sector that's not saturated today. If you really wanted to go to Mars, you have competition for that as well. So it's like, if you are really like an earthly startup, like it's super competitive right now. Also, retention is hard because there's no instant gratification, right? It requires a really longer time outlook. You can spend money today on Facebook and Google, and you can see those charts, like acquisition charts, go up the roof, right? So, but retention requires a 3, 6, 12, even multi-year outlook. And it's very hard for startups that are, or even mid-sized companies that are under constant pressure. Then we'll talk about rise of monopolies and how that's also becoming a challenge now, and also channel fatigue. So competition we just talked about, there's new players are springing up all the time. Users are spoiled for choice, and the first time user experience really needs to be bang on. And there are 2 opposing pressures on FTU, right? So it has to be really not just incrementally, it has to be so much more better. And also the time to deliver that wow factor has to be like really quick. You can't have that, like, as Mona was saying, 20 clicks down, or 3 days after you import your contacts, 5th day some offer will come your way. That's not going to work. People don't have that much time. 90% of the apps get installed within a month or so, or some such stat you'll be hearing today, right? So you have to have that wow factor, and it has to be almost instant. So that's not an easy thing to do. So differentiation is obviously a challenge. And at the end of the day, there are only 24 hours in a day. People's attention is very scarce. They can only spend so much time on these apps and consuming content and consuming information and playing with these games. So you cannot challenge that. You cannot add more time. The other thing we talked about is longer term outlook. That's really required for retention, because you will always be under pressure to, why is this not your exec leadership will always be like, why are the numbers not going up? Are we really focused on the right things? Why don't you spend some more and let's hope and pray that something might work out magically. So that's why I think sticking to some principles and saying that no, we want to get the core experience right, and that's what will help us in longer term sustainable growth. That's important. So if you look at an example here, there's two companies, company A and company B. Company A is adding 1 million users a month, and company B is adding 2 million users a month. Company A has 85%, 65% retention, whereas company B has 65. So basically, the company that's adding twice the number of users is retaining them slightly lesser. Over a 3-month growth chart, you will see that company B is obviously ahead. It seems like, oh, they're adding 2x the number of users. But if you fast forward 3 years, this is what happens. And it's very tempting to stay with the 6-month outlook and say, no, but let's just keep adding at the rate and we'll fix retention later. But it's not sustainable because eventually that will just catch up with you, right? So that's why I think it makes it hard that you have to just weather through all those questions and stick to that product principle that you are in it for the longer term. There's like amazing amount of channel fatigue right now, right? I have not checked my SMS for I don't know how long. It's like 10,000 unread SMSs. Every brand has co-opted every freaking channel every day. Valentine's Day, Women's Day, Health Day, Burger Day. I get notifications from Burger Singh also on like Women's Day. Like what the hell is that, right? So there's absolutely no way you can actually smartly like get attention right now. Even that's becoming hard because people are just dismissive of the channels, right? If Google doesn't catch you in spam, you somehow make it to your inbox, you have like another 50 such messages to kind of compete with. So that's also like becoming a bigger factor why you can't reach consumers through existing channels. So you have to build that differentiated and context-aware experience. And then obviously the 4 big ones, right? So they have deep pockets. They're continuing to aggressively go to adjacent growth opportunities. You can't say Amazon is an e-commerce company today, right? You can't say Apple is a phone company or a MacBook company. You can't say the same for Facebook or Amazon or Apple, right? So this is the graph of the number of times public company CEOs have talked about these companies in their earnings call. So, and this is across industries, and it's just there everywhere. So if they'll continue to grow aggressively, they'll continue to gobble up startups in every space that they see any growth opportunity. And gobbling up is the best case scenario. In most cases, they'll just drive them out of business, right? So that's again why, like for a lot of startups, having that longer term focus is actually expensive, and it's existential sometimes. So with that, like, let's talk about how we think about retention and growth. I think 3 things. Always stick to first principles product thinking. So we'll talk about that. Also, growth team is your product team. It cannot be outsourced. I think Mona also touched upon that. It's not a marketer's job. You can't outsource it. And by outsourcing, I don't mean it externally. I mean within the organization also. It cannot be somebody else's job. It's core product work. And customer first approach is a part of your first principles product thinking, but it's big enough that you want to kind of reiterate that. So those 3 things are key to our philosophy here. When I talk about some of the things that we've done at Zomato and abstract them out, some things I'd like to just caveat are that the best of insights are always almost the most obvious ones at hindsight, right? It may seem like really simple. Yeah, this makes sense. Obviously, you should have done that. But sometimes you have to go through the 5 wrong ways of doing something to unearth the right insight. And the most successful growth engines out there are really, really boring and very efficient. They are not like the most creative things that Facebook does, or they do something out of the box all the time. It's not that. They just do the right things all the time and repeat them every day 1,000 times. So it's like a series of micro optimizations. It's not like some big win or some big Hail Mary pass that just works out. Now we've got 100 million new users. It's just the small things that they keep doing again and again and again. So that's what I would say. Just keep that in mind, that often there are no lower hanging fruits and silver bullets. It's just that discipline. So first principles, product thinking, everything starts with the user. User could be anybody, like it could be your end consumer. We have merchants, those are as users as well. We have end consumers, we have internal employees when we build products for them. So you have to first understand that, who you're building for and how they will value it, what's the value that you bring to their lives, right? And if it doesn't make sense to you, don't do it. Like if you're tempted that, hey, everybody's done this notification campaign or Valentine's Day, हमको भी कुछ करना चाहिए, but क्यों करना चाहिए? You have to have a really good answer for that, right? Otherwise, you're just and it's easier said than done, because there's daily pressure of these things, like your dashboard staring at you, numbers not moving. You have to do something, right? But I think if you stick to the principle and say that if it's not making, as a consumer, would you click on that notification? As a consumer, would that add any value to you? You have to constantly ask yourself that and keep yourself honest. And be data informed. I think data is really important, but today it's a lot of, skewing towards like, if data is not telling us use common sense, we will not use common sense. I think it has to be a little bit of data informed approach, like, to give you a oft cliched kind of instance, like people were asking for faster horses, they were not asking for cars, right? People didn't ask for iPhones. But if you continue to just use data to make decisions, you may not see the non-incremental stuff out there that can be the leaps that you can make, which are non-incremental, right? So that's important as well. So we talked about this. So I'll just repeat that the most retention work is hardcore product work, and it doesn't happen overnight. You have to do a dozen experiments a month to land on the right UX. You have to really figure out what your core user experiences, user value is. You have to figure that out by talking to users. You have to figure that out by shipping multiple A/B tests or other kinds of tests that you do. So it won't happen overnight. So you can't assume somebody else is going to do that. So it's hardcore product management, hardcore product teams that have to own this and drive this. And that's what we believe in, and that's how we kind of approach this. Obviously, this is not to say that digital marketing is not important. Acquisition is a great channel, and obviously it's important. But those are complementary factors, right? Those have to be there as hygiene. Like you have to have a brand positioning. You have to have a brand. Your brand has to have a personality. That is hygiene. You have to have some quirk around your brand. You have to be based on the target segment that you have, right? And SDFC cannot send me a funny transaction message saying that, oh, you have only so much money in your bank. So they can't try stunts like that, right? So things like that, you have to be very, that those things are important. But at the end of the day, the hardcore, the essence of it is that it is hardcore product work. And as I was saying that, you can have, like if you've seen some of our brand positioning and our brand messaging, we get a lot of credit for a lot of that stuff, the hoardings that you see and the funny jokes that we make, or but I think that's just adding to the fact, if there was no customer value in if customers didn't value what Zomato brought to their lives, that would not even work. People will say, like, doesn't match what you are and what you're saying, right? So I think you have to start there, like what is the real customer value, an added feature or your product adds, and just make sure that you're focused on that. So if I talk specifically about Zomato, like we have lots of products, right? The point being that we look at different products, the growth and retention aspects of different products differently, right? We have classifieds, which is the core content listing business. So if you see, if you're curious about a restaurant, you'll go see what's the rating, what are the photos, what's the map. So that's our content business. Then we have online ordering business, which is order food at home. And we have Zomato Gold, which is a loyalty program, and it helps you have great experiences and get free stuff along the way. So I've just taken these examples, but we have a bunch of other products. Like we have table reservations, we have Zomato Treats inside online ordering, which is again a loyalty program within ordering. We have Base, which is an enterprisey point of sale solution, and a bunch of other stuff. But all of these we have to tackle differently. They have their own nuances. We can't think about one broad stroke on how growth and retention works for these. So I'll talk about some examples of each of these, like how we are tackling. Before that, So this is like the truth of, and to Mona's point about viral loops, every company has to figure out like, what is your core viral growth loop, right? So for us, this is the truth, right? We start with content. We have content listings. We have UGC as well. People write reviews, add photos. That drives traffic, that people find us on Google and other places, they come. And that drives engagement because some of them people contribute back, and then we get more content, right? So that is the truth of our first flywheel, what I call, right? And this, we'll talk about more how we kind of seed this and kind of make sure that this keeps running, right? And then we started our transaction flywheel. So we have a lot of traffic on our platform, which helps us get offtake of transactions pretty cheaply. We don't have to buy traffic to do that, right? We can divert these guys to our transaction funnels. This could be online ordering, this could be table reservations, this could be buying gold. And we've seen that the more people transact with you, the more retentive they are. So they'll come back more often than non-transacting users, and then add traffic as well. So basically, this is the truth of how we look at product and growth at Zomato, right? And we'll come back to that as we talk about some future slides, but basically it's this, like, more content leads to traffic, traffic leads to engagement, traffic also enables transaction businesses to take off at nominal CAC, and then we retain those users better, and that's more traffic as well. So talking about specific examples on how we seeded that growth loop, early on the issue that the company ran into was that how do we make sure there's more UGC on the platform, right? So we saw a healthy cohort of users coming on and adding reviews and ratings and adding photos, but that was not growing, right? They've tried multiple methods, notifications, XYZ, but nothing was happening, right? So again, sticking to the first principles, like what were the core user problems because of which that cohort was stagnant, right? And it was because people felt there was no reward, there was no incentive. Why should I add reviews? Like, I don't get, it's like shouting into a black hole. I add a review and then it's done. I don't hear anything back, there's no feedback, there's no incentive. So we worked on that, right? So we added rich profiles, we added a social layer. So you have a Zomato graph now, you can follow people, you can like, you can check in. We added citywide leaderboards so that people who are highly engaged and adding a lot of content can see themselves up and down that leaderboard, like I'm first, I'm second, that gives them bragging rights. We also added foodie levels and expert badges. So if you've added like 20 reviews in Connaught Place, you are an expert there, right? And if you've added like 100 reviews overall with nice photos, nice text, you can climb through our ladders. And that became a really prestigious thing for a lot of food bloggers. And a lot of people who are in that business now use their Zomato profile as a LinkedIn kind of a thing. Like, instead of pointing people to their LinkedIn, they'll just showcase their stuff on Zomato, say, because if they're talking to event companies or restaurants to ask them to come and review their place, that's how they do that. So this is a screenshot of a leaderboard which is now suspended. We are redesigning it and bringing it back. And this is a more richer profile that we have now. So you'll see, like, there's a foodie level, there are neighborhoods in which that person is an expert, and all their, so they feel more pride in, like, okay, there's some way now I can contribute, I can hear feedback, and there's more incentive. So as this happens, this helped us basically close that loop, right? Or start that loop rather. So more content, more feedback, more expertise, more badges, more validation, and so the network effect kind of took off from there. So that was that. Then the other problem that we had was, everybody knows that the app cohorts are typically stickier. So if the user has your app and they're experiencing your platform on the app, they're typically healthier cohort than somebody on web or somebody on web. So we wanted to increase that cohort. So we said, let's do something to just drastically improve that cohort. And it was like, itna traffic web pe aata hai, we'll just block everywhere and ask them to download the app, right? Great idea. So if you want to read the menu, download the app. If you want to see photos, download the app. If you want to see more reviews, download the app. So this is what you see, right? So if you say, basically it gives you a pop-up to go to the app store. If you say no, there's a hard blocker which says, just get the app, right? There's nothing. So obviously it works. We more than doubled our daily installs. This is an actual screenshot from our Apple and Google Play stores. So at this point, people would have just gone home and said, our job here is done. We more than doubled our daily installs. But again, I think retention needs a longer term horizon, right? That's not what it is. I think daily install is the wrong metric to track in that case. Because if you're holding a gun to your user's head and saying download the app, he'll download the app, right? But next day he'll also uninstall the app. So you have to look at specific cohort retention. And as you can see in that graph, that red cohort was the blocker cohort, and it's obviously we are not able to retain it at all. And over a 6-month, 9-month, 12-month period, the uninstalls really just catch up. So what you should actually look at in that cases is actually install and minus uninstalls. Is a net base increasing or not, right? But it's not, again, if you're a startup and you tell your boss you're going to reverse that trend, it's not an easy sell. Like, it takes discipline. It's not, again, most of it is like just these simple decisions, but you have to have that discipline and belief that this is the right thing to do. Like, this is a vanity metric at some point, right? If my uninstall rate is exactly showing the same trend, then this is of no use. But I know a lot of people, that's the organizational challenge that we've been talking about. This is a hard sell, but when you know that's the right thing to do, you have to go and do it. So what was the learning from here? Like, learning was there that you have to build smart. The product has to be smart, right? You cannot build like these hard, dumb rules like download the app. You have to first create a differentiated app experience and then sell it to users that if you experience my product on the app, I can give you 5 features that you can't get. Like, you can't have a map-based nearby restaurants flow on MWeb. You can't have import from Instagram. If you're a food blogger, I can get you import your photos from Instagram. On the other hand, if somebody is just looking at finding a restaurant phone number on Zomato and we ask him to go download the app, that's just dumb. They'll get it from 10 other sources. So we have to build that awareness that what's the right trade-off for that friction. And also we have to be context and location aware. Like, if you have a FTU coming on MWeb, you better let him explore and discover the value of the platform. And then later on at some right flow, say that, hey, if you install our app, probably be better off. That's a better flow. So that context awareness has to be there. And we operate in like 23 cities around the world. So there are markets where app adoption is definitely lagging. So you cannot, force the behavior beyond a certain point. So if the local culture is around, like, people browse these places on MWeb, you better have an MWeb experience that's really good. So invest in that. So that was like some of the things that we've learned from that experience. And if I now look at the second part of the flywheel, which is how we kickstart the transaction flywheel, I'll just talk about I'll reiterate the same things that, again, there is no silver bullet here when we look at growth there, right, or retention there. It's just a series of really, really small optimizations that we do. So from hundreds of experiments that we've run, it just boils down to these factors, which are, again, sounding very obvious, but these are the factors that kind of have heavy correlation in our data, that if we do these, then growth will come. So supply density and choice of restaurants in an area, to an extent, growth is directly correlated with it, and beyond that benchmark, it doesn't matter. But so wherever neighborhoods where we are not up to that benchmark, we have to basically get supply to that benchmark. And beyond that, it's not a factor, but we have to get it there. Then first-time user experience is really, really important. And why is it challenging? Because you don't have user data, so you can't personalize it, right? You can't personalize an experience because you're just learning about the user. So and we have limited screen size. So if somebody's coming to order food and you have 100 restaurants or 200 restaurants in a neighborhood, we have to pick 5 that we think this guy is going to like, right? Otherwise, you've lost the user, or he orders from a suboptimal restaurant where the experience is not that good. So that's the challenge there. Time to order acceptance, again, seems obvious, but the first time you order and you have a good experience, you'll obviously come back. We also have direct correlation with the orders that we fulfill ourselves, because we have our own runner fleet, and so there we control end-to-end experience, and it's always better to do that than, say, it's a order fulfilled by restaurants directly. And post-order experience, with every additional phone call, even if the order is on time, and even if there's no problem with the food, but if the delivery boy calls somebody, our NPS drops and retention drops. So we have to make sure that it's a contactless experience. So these are broadly the big factors that we are actually working on. And in these, there are small experiments that will keep running. Like how do you prioritize which supply to get, which neighborhoods to prioritize? How do you make sure that time to order is definitely like within seconds and not minutes? How do you make sure our fleet on the ground ramps up, and where should they ramp up, like which cities and stuff like that? So we are just looking at data and making those decisions all the time. And in talking about in-product stuff, food shots has helped us a lot. Like if you have good appetizing photos along with the food, that helps. We've got a loyalty program in Zomato Treats. For 149 rupees, you can get free dessert from wherever you order in participating restaurants. That has helped us. Personalization, I'll talk about a little bit about what the challenge there is, but that also we've got a large effort undergoing where we want to get a lot of these models out. And we continue to experiment with menus. Like even in the screenshot that you see, you have bestsellers on top. It's not a traditional appetizers, main course, dessert kind of a menu. We keep experimenting what to show users, and online experience should not be like just a replica of the offline experience. So if I talk about personalization, like we're constantly testing this experience based on more than 50 to 60 parameters. And those can include user signals like location, platform, average order value, history, payment method, and so on. And restaurant signals also, what's the popularity, distance, delivery time, cost for two, and all of that. And what time of the day you're opening the app, what day of the week it is, all of that. And there's like at least 30, 40 more that I've missed. But the challenge here being that if you look at it on the left-hand side, this is the number of cuisines that restaurants have been tagged with in Delhi. It's like more than 100 cuisines. And then in India, we have this amazing concept of multi-cuisine restaurant, where everything serves everything, right? So this is a sample menu of a restaurant which has like Chinese, Italian, pizza, pasta. What else is there? There's not a cuisine in the world that they don't serve, right? It's a Harvard case study, actually. So now if you personalize somebody who ordered from here, what do you show him? If somebody orders Chinese from Bikaner Wala, it's a very interesting thing. Like, so what we have to actually figure out is cuisine authenticity and user inclination for authenticity. So if somebody is ordering pizza from a very upscale joint versus ordering pizza from Bikaner Wala, we have to treat those decisions separately. And so we have to build this whole, like for every city, every neighborhood, we have this 100 by 100 matrix of cuisine similarity. And it's not based on what we think. Sometimes it comes out the users think like Indian is closest to Japanese, for example. Right? We can't question that. That's the data, and that we have to respect, right? So we build this cuisine similarity matrices for every neighborhood. We also then look at authenticity scores for each of the restaurants, like from 0 to 100%, where do we feel this lies. And then for a user, we then have to model the propensity for authenticity. So we think you are okay with like Indian Chinese place, or you want the best Hunan in the land, right? So that we have to figure out. So personalization for us is challenging because of those reasons. Like we have to factor all of this. And if you're a new user, obviously we don't know much about you. But even after that, and we know that what works here doesn't work for us in Australia, what works in Delhi doesn't work for us in Bombay. Forget India versus Australia. So that's, I just wanted to just talk about that a little. So those were the three primary examples that I had. So I'll just talk about, I don't have slides, but we, again, to bring together the concept of first principles product thinking and that retention, you need some longer term thinking. Like we launched Zomato Gold, which is doing fantastically well. We sold like more than 150K subscription in less than 6 months. So our first cohort was up for renewal in Feb. So one strategy, the obvious one could have been like just email everybody, hey, your membership is expiring on so-and-so date and this is how you buy it, right? But if you thought about it a little deeply, like and care about your users a little deeply, what we decided to do is like we actually really thought through all the cohorts, like who has paid, whose credit card we have versus we don't have, who has a standing instruction with us, who doesn't, how many people have gone, how many times. There was a subset of users who've never used the Gold membership. How can we ask them to renew? They don't even know the value of it. So instead what we did was we had a specific messaging framework for each of these cohorts. Like for people who haven't really tried it, we give them an extra month. We like go ahead and try these 10 new places in your neighborhood that now accept gold. So we thought it was not fair for us to ask them for money because they've not even experienced. For people who have experienced it a lot, we showed them like, you've saved so much money and you've gone out so many times. Why don't you continue to enjoy the benefits at the same price, and so on and so forth. And we did it across like for a month, up to a month lead up time to the actual date. We kept sending these messages, and our almost drop-offs were like minimal. There was hardly anybody who dropped out because again, the core product value has to be there. But that's one area I thought we did well in terms of where the option because there's so much else also going on in the team and we have to prioritize. We could have just sent one blanket notification, hey, your membership is expiring, please renew. Versus like going through, like I think we have 12, 13 segments for whom we actually did messaging, very custom messaging for each of those. So that was another example that came to mind on like how we think about that.
We'll take a few questions, but just to extend what Rahul is trying to say, there's a workshop. This is at 3 p.m. Please stay around because this is exactly what we're trying to do in the workshop. Is explain how do you go about trying to do something like this. So please stay around for that one. Questions?
Do you feel the need to ring-fence your product experiments against the marketing activations that are also on at the same time?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and we've struggled with this everywhere because sometimes it's hard to. We try to isolate as much as we can so that we don't dismiss the results later on, because then it's a waste. But sometimes it's like you can't. So for example, we try to do experiments same day of the week to same day of the week if we are we have to compare it to a certain period, and we do a bunch of things that will eliminate that somebody dismissing those results later on. But for example, if there was something unrelated in the external world that could have maybe like rain somewhere or something that we can't control, that could have had some impact on the experiment, that we cannot totally isolate from. But to the extent humanly possible, we try to make it as isolated as we can. Yeah. And actually, to be fair, I must tell you that we are not huge fans of A/B testing. Right? We typically run with the first principle product, thinking that like is this the right thing for user? And the decision is made, then how to do it is an A/B test. Like which option wins is an A/B test. We don't A/B test ideas in terms of like, is this the right idea or that a lot yet? We A/B test the execution of an idea. I don't know if that is clear. But the decision has been made that this is what we have to do. We just have to find the best implementation of that decision, if that makes sense.
Hello. Hi, Rahul. Two questions actually. So I really like your, this one, the whole bloggers meets that you keep doing and a lot of content that comes in, a lot of reviews that are done. And I've met a few of them and I really enjoy how they take pride in being a Zomato blogger, right? I want to try and understand, because it's not just online, right? Not by showing notifications or people filling in reviews. I think there's a lot of ecosystem that goes offline. I want to try and understand how you guys have done that, just whatever is shareable. And the second piece is around the Zomato Gold that you guys have done. I read a statement by the Pinder Goel which said that, a lot of that you did on this was via referrals. And I want to try and understand how did that work for you? Whatever, again, is shareable.
Cool. So let me attempt to answer that. So first question was around ecosystem and just the community feeling. So I think, again, it starts with doing the right thing, right? For example, how will Zomato grow? Zomato will grow only if the restaurant industry grows. And restaurant industry will grow if, we are just helping them grow, right? If, for example, they complain to us that, hey, there are fake reviews on the platform and there are some other competition is trying to screw us with some fake reviews and stuff. We've always been neutral. We have a neutrality team who make sure that it's as objective as possible. And basically and at the same time, we have a community team that reaches out to these bloggers and educates them. Like, it's not wrong that they got called to a food blogger event and then they wrote a review. It is wrong that they are not actually disclosing that, so users have full transparency that, hey, I was called to this event by this restaurant and this review is part of that thing. So when they see us do this the right way and make sure that our intentions are correct, like we don't want to screw users or we don't really want to screw merchants either. We'll grow with when they grow, and I think that when you do the right thing, the same that community just grows around it, right? So I think beyond that is just helping. Like we have this thing called we started a while back called Skillets, where we do events for startup restaurant owners. So we bring experts from the industries to talk to them, like how should you think about menu, business, operations, because a lot of entrepreneurs right now, food entrepreneurs today, they don't have a lot of experience, but they're just running out of pure passion. So we want to help them grow. So we do these events. Same with on the user side, helping food bloggers use the platform in a way that benefits both the merchants and them. The second part around referrals was accidental. I don't know if you mentioned that in the thing, was actually accidental. It was a feature that we didn't want to ship. It was somehow it didn't get closed when we launched Gold. The plan was not to have referrals and launch without it and then see. And I think the flag was a bug basically. And then we saw the uptake, and I know it's not a politically correct statement to say something happened by accident, but it did. But then we saw the uptake, and we see fundamentally the value proposition was strong. But even if we didn't have referrals, I think we would have sold as many, because some of these things then become like, you can't tell correlation, causation. But I feel the fundamental, like if you can recoup the value of the membership by going out once or twice, it's a no-brainer, right, in a 3-month period. So I think that's what people saw, and that's why we got oversubscribed. But then when we saw how well it's working, we just let it run.
Talking about Zomato Gold again, what is the basic reason keeping it limited to a user base? Just to give it a premium positioning, or there are logistical reasons behind it?
I think both, right? We want to do right by the merchants. We don't want them to be flooded by people. So we have to make sure we grow responsibly, and that's why we kind of. I think when we launched, we had like 1,000 odd participating restaurants, and we have a growth model which says that for every 10,000 users we add, we should add a corresponding number of merchants onto the offering as well. Otherwise, there'll be like a lot of people going to these smaller set of restaurants, and that may not be the correct UX for them. So we want to grow it in a way that the more users we have, we also grow supply, and that takes time. So building that supply across cities.
Hello, Rahul. As we have seen, product is a bridge between marketing and tech, like passing marketing requirements to tech. I need to know personally that if in any cases, if you try to launch a new feature or enhancement for your product, and due to some technical limitations or any feasibility issues, you might not be able to pitch that product at the same time. So if in those cases, were there any instances like for those X was the solution that didn't work and you went for Y?
Yeah, I think that is a constant. So if you're expecting an answer that your struggle will go away, it will never go away. That's life. So if you solve one problem today, tomorrow there'll be 20 other prioritization challenges between tech and marketing and product that you still will have to deal with. So idea is like, are you consistent in how you make decisions, and do you have the vision to say that this is the goal and that's why I made this decision, right? So a lot of times experiments will go bad. Like Vikalp talk about like how they've over years built such fantastic infrastructure for personalization. So if you are a startup today, can you really afford to say for the next 6 months, I will just build that? You can't, right? That's not practical. So you have to pick and choose like which sprints you'll prioritize getting something out quick and dirty and getting some validation, and where you'll build for the larger term horizon, right? So I think that's a constant juggling thing that good product people are good at. It is like when to prioritize what. I don't know if that was what your question was.
So what actually I wanted to get is that if there's an instance in which X solution doesn't work, would you go with the pilot project for that and then figure out any feasible solution for that?
So if should we use a pilot kind of a program to see if something works or not? Yeah, we do that all the time. There is a lot of times we, even if you looked at, we shipped a big redesign of our mobile platforms just recently. iOS is out. I think Android is in the process of getting rolled out. So we took a lot of calls there, like, maybe we changed the way we display ratings. We did a bunch of other overhauls. But a lot of consumers came back saying that, hey, they don't like this particular thing. And then we go back to data, we go back to usage data, we see, and then we had to roll back some changes. So we do that all the time. This was a different case, but we could, if there was another example where I could say that fire safety was another thing, right? So we got a lot of feedback after the fire's unfortunate incident in Kamala Mills here that why doesn't Zomato have fire safety certificates, right? And we weren't sure if we should be like in that because it's like government and how much, because I think we think the challenge is a little bit both around loopholes in the system that will let these places get those certificates anyway. We weren't sure how much it will help us, but we still went ahead and launched a pilot where we said for all restaurants that give us the fire safety certificates, we'll just launch it. So within a week or so, we had that whole thing going. We have like 300 odd and ever-growing number of restaurants where we show those certificates now because we just got bombarded by our users that they wanted. But we weren't sure, but we still kind of said in a low investment mode, how can we just start doing something like that?
Thank you.